posted by you/frustrated wife to. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 33M, for 4 years, together for 7. Our kids are 4F and 2M. I'm really not sure where to start. He just doesn't know when it's time to be serious. This is the only problem in our marriage. He's extremely loving, affectionate, and kind, and he loves being a dad. He loves our children more than anything, and they love him as well. He's constantly playing with them, and I think this is where the issues start to arise. My husband cannot understand when it's time to put playtime on pause. I'm serious when I say he's in playtime mode with our children from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. This results in extremely hyperactive children in the morning when I'm trying to get our daughter ready for kindergarten, and it's incredibly frustrating to have to struggle to get her fed, cleaned, dressed, and out the door on time for school, where he will then drive her as well. At night, this leads to hyperactive children who can take up to 2 hours to settle down and go to bed, by which point it's way past their bedtime, and they sometimes wake up grumpy in the morning because they didn't get enough sleep. He will even sometimes egg our children on at night when we're sitting with them in bed, trying to wind them down to sleep. It's incredibly infuriating, and I'll tell him to stop because I'm clearly trying to get them to sleep, but all he's doing is keeping them up. He just laughs and says he's having fun. My husband doesn't do the hard discipline. He tells our kids to stop fighting or to stop touching fragile objects, but when it comes to timeouts or taking away things like dessert, certain toys, or TV time for the day, he all but refuses. He leaves me to be the bad guy, and I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm tired of feeling like the mean mom who doesn't like fun or has to ruin their fun, but he just won't step up. I've told him he needs to stop leaving all the hard discipline to me, and he says he will, but then leaves it all to me again the next time. I dread the thought of when the kids are older and things like grounding become necessary. My husband is constantly breaking our children's toys because he wants to play with them. He broke a little trampoline we got for them because he wanted to jump and play on it with them. He's also broken 2 of those toddler-sized motorized cars, one for our daughter and one for our son, by sitting on them and riding around. I'd look out the window and see him having the time of his life, riding around on these things, while our kids stood at the edge of the yard, watching and waiting for their turn. He also broke a little kid's basketball hoop by pretending to be on a pro basketball team and doing dunks, which bent and eventually broke the hoop. For our daughter's birthday last month, one of our friends bought her a little scooter. My husband broke it within a week because he wouldn't stop playing on it and doing tricks every time he stepped outside. Our daughter was devastated because she loved that scooter, even more so because it was a gift from our friend, making it extra special to her. I feel terrible that the toy my friend spent her money on was destroyed by my husband before my daughter barely got to play with it. Now, my husband is 6 feet tall and about 20 pounds overweight. He has absolutely no business playing on these children's toys, and I've told him time and time again to stop because they aren't made for someone his size, and that he will break them. And then he does. He'll sheepishly carry the broken toy to me and say sorry, but shortly after, he's back at it again, destroying another toy. We got our daughter a bike for Christmas so she can start learning to ride, but I don't even want to give it to her because I know he'll ruin it for her, like he always does with their toys. These are just some of the bigger examples of broken toys. There are also countless smaller things he's broken, like balls, dolls, little cars, a dollhouse, a slide, etc. He's always making our kids play with him, even when they clearly don't want to or just want to relax and watch a movie. This mostly applies to our son, who is much more introverted and sensitive than our daughter and usually prefers calm, quiet interaction over the loud and hyperactive playtime my husband insists on. Several times, he's frustrated and overwhelmed our son by continuously pushing him to play, which has led to our son crying because he just wants to be left alone. Now, onto what finally prompted me to post here. My husband is always telling our kids, and everyone else, that they are his best friends. Since our daughter started learning to talk, he has trained her to answer the question, "Who's your best friend?" with Daddy. He's now starting to do the same with our son, who is in the early stages of talking. At first, I didn't see any issues with this and actually thought it was cute. However, our daughter has made a really good friend at school this year. I'll call her Emily, 5F. She's always talking about Emily and asking if Emily can come over or if she can go to Emily's house. Today, my husband asked our daughter, "Who's your best friend?" She paused for a moment, got a huge grin on her face, and said, "Emily." It looked like my husband had just heard the worst news of his life. He asked her, "What?" And she giggled and said Emily again. My husband, trying to redirect her, said, No, who's your best friend?" But she giggled again and repeated, "Emily?" At that point, his face went blank. He immediately removed himself from the situation and went into the other room. Our daughter seemed a little confused but mostly undisturbed and went back to watching cartoons. I followed him to check on him, and I realized he was starting to cry. He told me that he's supposed to be our daughter's best friend and that he couldn't believe she would toss him aside like that. Up until now, as I said, I thought the whole best friend thing was cute. I had no idea how seriously my husband took it. If I had, I would have tried to put a stop to it earlier, Although, I'm still unsure how you even tell your husband to stop calling his kids his best friends. Anyway, I was a bit shocked at this point, and I admit I didn't use as much tact as I probably should have. I asked him if he was serious. He said, "Of course I am," and I told him that he's a parent. He's not supposed to be his kid's best friend, he's supposed to be their parent. I explained that he's 29 years older than our daughter, and of course she's going to eventually make friends her own age and start considering them her best friends. He told me I didn't understand, and I responded that he was being ridiculous and childish. He looked at me as if I had just slapped him and said I was being heartless, accusing me of not wanting him to have a good relationship with our kids. Then he left the house early to go to work. I have no idea what to do. I almost feel ridiculous because how can someone have an issue with their husband loving their kids? I feel insane, and I haven't been able to talk to any friends about this because I'm afraid they'll all say, "So you're mad at your husband for playing with your kids? What's wrong with you?" But I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to address these issues with my husband in a way that he'll understand and be reasonable about. I also feel extremely anxious about everything now, especially because my husband and I have been trying for the last 2 months to conceive another baby. Now I don't want to bring another child into the world without having this mess sorted out. But I know telling my husband I want to wait on this third child will devastate him. Edit. Since it's being asked a few times, I'm just going to put this here instead of typing the same comment repeatedly. My husband's relationship with his parents growing up was, in his words, great. He has 3 siblings, all successful adults, and his parents' interactions with our kids now give no indication that they are the reason my husband seems unable to grasp certain aspects of parenting himself. Update 1 month later. First, I just want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. I got overwhelmed with the amount of responses while using my phone. I didn't have access to a computer when I posted, so I stopped replying, but I read every single comment and story. I've received a few PMs asking for an update, and I'm sorry it's so late. So, I sat my husband down the night he got home from work after posting my original post, and we had a long talk. This would be incredibly long if I included all the details, so I'm summarizing and following the points I made in my original post. Keep in mind that our conversation didn't follow the order of my post, so I apologize if anything seems confusing, as we discussed things out of order. On not knowing when to pause playtime, I told him that I know he loves playing with the kids, and I love that he enjoys it, but I really need him to work with me during bedtime. I also pointed out, once again, that their lack of sleep is making them grumpy and harder to manage in the mornings, and that they're growing and need their rest. He's had a couple of slip-ups since, but he's really toned it down around bedtime and is making more of an effort to help. He started reading to them instead. I used to do it, and he's 20 times better at it because they love the funny voices he gives the characters. On discipline, I told him it's not fair for him to constantly make me feel like the bad guy. I explained that no parent likes disciplining their kids, but it's necessary for them to learn and grow into good adults, and I need him to be united with me on punishments. He's still having a little trouble with this, but he's been making more of an effort, which I really appreciate. On breaking their toys, I told him again that I know he loves playing with the kids, but he really needs to stop destroying their things. Not only is it upsetting for them, but it's causing us to needlessly spend extra money replacing things that we shouldn't have to. During this part of the talk, I suggested we finally get the full-size trampoline we've been discussing for a while, and I encouraged him to dig out his bike from the garage so he can ride with our daughter when she learns. We're probably more excited about the trampoline than the kids, lol. We talked more about this, but these are the most important points. He realized he was going too far after I described the scene from my original post, where he was riding around on their little cars while the kids were just standing on the sidelines. I'm also happy to report that he stayed off our daughter's new bike. On making the kids play when they don't want to, he agreed that it wasn't right for him to push them just because he wants to play. I told him that our kids are individuals, and just because they're children doesn't mean their boundaries shouldn't be respected or that they don't deserve time to themselves. He understood and has been more mindful of that. And now onto the best friend thing. This was the first topic we discussed. Long story short, he was feeling hurt and having a bit of trouble accepting that our daughter is growing up. This was really the first big moment where she did or said something that showed she's starting to mature, and he just wasn't prepared for it, so he handled it poorly, which he fully acknowledged. I took a line from a comment on my original post and told him that our children will have many best friends in their lifetime, but he will always be their only dad. This visibly comforted him, so thank you to whoever shared that. I also took a suggestion from someone in the comments and encouraged him to call his own parents to ask for advice on how they handled watching their 4 kids grow up and eventually leave the nest. He really liked this idea and has since done it. I also showed him stories that commenters on my original post shared about their own relationships with their parents growing up. I made it clear that I wasn't showing him these stories because I think he'll become like those parents, but rather to give him insight into the children's perspective. These stories hit him pretty hard, which led to a deeper conversation about his fears and concerns as a parent. I left something out of my original post that I didn't realize was relevant. A lot of people ask about my husband's relationship with his parents growing up, and I answered that it was great. However, my own relationship with my parents was horrible. Long story short, I don't get along with, nor even like, my parents, and I only see or talk to them maybe once a year. Growing up was miserable, to say the least, and it affected me for a long time. I was a huge ball of anger and resentment because of the way they treated me. I told my husband all of this a few months after we started dating, so he was aware of everything from the beginning. My husband told me that he had promised himself he would be the best dad he could be because he wanted our kids to have the childhood he knew I had wanted, and the one he wanted for them. At this point, I started crying and was a bit of a mess for a few minutes, lol. It was honestly one of the most touching things anyone has ever said to me. I told him that he is the best dad, and that I love him so much for it. Realizing that this was essentially the root of everything made it a lot easier to continue discussing the rest of my points. Everything has been great since then. My husband really listened to what I was saying this time and has made a big effort to help me out more, while also toning down his energy with the kids. He and our daughter have been riding around on their bikes together every weekend, and I've started learning to ride too, so I can eventually join them. Again, I want to thank everyone for commenting on my original post and helping me gather my thoughts. I did feel that a few things said about my husband were a bit extreme, but I understand that's something that happens when people give advice on a situation with limited information.